You know, I met a man once who had the most detailed plan I'd ever seen for building a business. Beautiful plan. Typed up, color-coded, organized in a 3-ring binder with tabs and everything. He showed it to me with such pride, and I could see the intelligence in every page. This plan was 5 years old. 5 years. And you know what he told me? He was still waiting for the right time to start. Still waiting for the market to be just right, for his savings to be just a little higher, for the economy to settle down, for the kids to be a little older. Always waiting, always someday. I saw that same man 10 years later, and guess what? Still waiting. Different excuses. Same binder. Same someday. The saddest part wasn't that he never started. The saddest part was he genuinely believed he was being smart, being careful, being responsible. But let me tell you something that might sting a little. Waiting isn't wisdom. Waiting is just fear dressed up in a business suit. Here's what I've learned after all these years of studying success and failure, and I've studied plenty of both. The people who stay poor forever aren't usually the ones without ideas. They're not the ones without intelligence or even without opportunity. They're the ones who master the art of waiting. They become absolute experts at it. They can give you 27 reasons why now isn't the right time, and every single reason will sound completely logical. But logic and wisdom aren't always the same thing, are they? Let me paint you a picture with real numbers, because numbers don't lie like our emotions do. Let's say you're 30 years old right now, and you've got an idea for a small business, a side income, an investment, whatever it is. You tell yourself you'll start when conditions are perfect, maybe in 5 years when you've saved more money, when you know more, when you feel ready. Sounds reasonable, right? But here's what actually happens during those 5 years of waiting. Someone else starts. They stumble, they learn, they adjust, they grow. 5 years later, when you finally feel ready, they've got 5 years of experience, 5 years of relationships, 5 years of lessons learned, 5 years of income and compound growth. You're not starting even. You're starting 5 years behind someone who wasn't smarter than you, wasn't more talented than you, wasn't more prepared than you. They just started while you waited. The truth is, there's never a perfect time. Never. I started studying this principle seriously after I went broke at age 25. And let me tell you, when you're broke, every single condition is wrong. The timing is terrible. You don't have the resources. You don't have the knowledge. You don't have the connections. Everything screams wait, but I noticed something fascinating. The people who built wealth did it during recessions, during booms, during uncertainty, during stability. They did it when they were young and when they were old. They did it with advantages and without them. The common thread wasn't perfect conditions. The common thread was they refused to wait for perfect conditions. You want to know what waiting really costs you? It's not just the opportunity you miss. It's not just the money you don't make. It's something far more valuable. It costs you the person you would have become. See, when you take action, even imperfect action, you grow. You develop skills. You build confidence. You learn what works and what doesn't. You become someone different, someone more capable. But when you wait, you stay the same person with the same fears, the same limitations, the same doubts. A year goes by, 5 years go by, and you look in the mirror and you're still that person who's getting ready to get ready. I remember talking to a farmer once, wise old man who'd been working the land for 50 years. He told me about his neighbor who spent every spring analyzing the perfect time to plant. This neighbor would check the weather forecasts, study the soil conditions, consult the almanacs, talk to every other farmer in the county. Meanwhile, my friend, he planted when the season came. Some years the weather cooperated perfectly, some years it didn't. But you know what? Over 50 years he had 50 harvests. His neighbor, he had good reasons and empty fields. You can't harvest what you never plant, and you can't plant if you're always waiting for guaranteed perfect weather. Here's a hard truth that took me years to accept. The people who wait for certainty are really waiting for a guarantee against failure. They want to know it's going to work before they start. But life doesn't give those guarantees. Success doesn't come with a money-back guarantee. Growth doesn't come with a promise that you won't look foolish or make mistakes. The guarantee you're waiting for doesn't exist. It never has, and it never will. So while you're waiting for something that's never coming, life is passing you by at full speed. Let me tell you what I've observed. Poor people wait for permission. They wait for someone to tell them it's okay to start. They wait for conditions to be perfect. They wait for fear to go away. They wait for more information. They wait for the right moment that their gut will supposedly tell them about. Rich people, they start before they're ready. They start scared. They start without all the answers. They start and figure it out along the way. That's the fundamental difference, and it's not a small one. You know what happens when you wait? You get really good at preparing, but terrible at executing. You become an expert at planning, but a novice at doing. I've met people who have spent more time planning their business than some successful entrepreneur spent building theirs. All that planning feels productive. It feels like progress. But it's not. It's just sophisticated procrastination. It's waiting dressed up to look like work. The math is simple but brutal. Every day you wait is a day someone else is building. Every week you spend getting ready is a week someone else is getting results. Every month you delay is a month of compound growth you'll never get back. Time is the one resource you can't recover, can't buy more of, can't borrow from tomorrow. And waiting is the habit that burns through your time like it's worthless. Here's something else I've noticed. Waiting becomes a habit, and like all habits, it gets stronger with practice. The first time you wait, you've got good reasons. The second time, the reasons are a little weaker, but you barely notice. The third time, the 10th time, the 100th time, you're not even looking for the right time anymore. You're just waiting because that's what you do. That's who you've become. The person who waits, the person who's always about to start, the person with potential that never quite turns into results. I challenge you to look at your own life right now, today. What are you waiting for? What have you been telling yourself you'll do when the time is right? When you have more money? When you know more? When you feel confident? Write it down. Now ask yourself honestly, how long have you been waiting? 6 months? 2 years? 5 years? 10? And here's the really important question. What makes you think the conditions will be more perfect tomorrow than they are today? What's going to magically change? The people who build wealth, who create the lives they want, who break out of poverty and stay out, they understand something crucial. Action creates clarity. You don't get clear and then take action. You take action and get clear. You start and the path reveals itself. You begin and you learn what you need to know. You jump and you build your wings on the way down. That sounds risky, and it is. But you know what's riskier? Spending your entire life waiting for a perfect moment that never comes, and then looking back at 80 years old, realizing you never really lived, you just waited to live. The waiting game is seductive because it feels safe. It feels responsible. It feels like you're being smart. But it's a trap. And it's the first habit that keeps people poor forever. Not because waiting makes you lose money, but because waiting prevents you from ever getting in the game where money can be made. You can't win a race you never enter. You can't build wealth with opportunities you never take. You can't grow into the person you're capable of becoming if you never leave the comfort of getting ready. But here's the thing about the waiting game. It never works alone. It's got a partner, a companion habit that's even more dangerous because it gives you something to blame your waiting on. See, waiting keeps you stuck, but this next habit convinces you it's not even your fault. So while you're waiting, you need something to justify that waiting, don't you? You need a reason that makes sense, that sounds legitimate, that lets you sleep at night knowing you're not moving forward. And that's where blame comes in. Blame is waiting's best friend. They work together like a team designed to keep you exactly where you are forever. I knew a man, worked in the same factory for 40 years. Every single time I saw him, and I mean every time, he had a complaint. The company wasn't paying enough. The government was taking too much in taxes. The rich people were rigging the system. His parents didn't give him the advantages other people had. He didn't get the right education. The economy was always wrong, either too hot or too cold, never just right. And you know what's tragic? Every single one of his complaints had some element of truth to it. That's what made it so dangerous. He wasn't making things up. The system does have problems. Life isn't fair. Some people do start with advantages others don't have. But here's what he never understood. Being right about what's wrong doesn't make you rich. It just makes you right and poor. And let me tell you, something I learned the hard way. For things to change, you have to change. But when you're busy blaming everyone and everything else for your situation, you never have to change. You never have to get better. You can just stay exactly as you are and point fingers at all the reasons why. That's not your fault. It's comfortable, it's easy, and it will keep you poor until the day you die. The blame game is sophisticated. It's not like people walk around saying, I'm making excuses. Nobody thinks of themselves that way. They genuinely believe the external factors are the problem. And listen, I'm not saying external factors don't exist. I'm not saying life is fair or that everyone has equal opportunities. What I'm saying is this: successful people and unsuccessful people often face the same external factors, but they respond to them completely differently. One group spends their energy blaming the factors. The other group spends their energy figuring out how to succeed despite the factors. Here's the fundamental truth. You can make excuses or you can make money, but you can't make both. You've got to choose. Every minute you spend explaining why something isn't your fault is a minute you're not spending figuring out what to do about it. Every ounce of energy you put into justifying your position is energy you're not putting into improving your position. Blame feels like you're doing something, but you're not. You're just organizing your reasons for staying stuck. I remember when I was 25 years old, broke, and I mean really broke. I had plenty of people I could have blamed. The company I was with went under. The economy in my area was rough. I didn't come from money. I didn't have a college degree. I didn't have connections. I could have built a beautiful case for why my situation wasn't my fault. And you know what? I did for a while. I complained, I explained, I justified. And while I was doing all that, explaining, I stayed broke. Then one day someone said something to me that changed everything. They said, Jim, if you keep blaming other people for your problems, you're giving them control of your life. That hit me like a truck, because it was true. Every time I blamed the economy, I was saying the economy controlled my success. Every time I blamed my lack of education, I was saying my education controlled my future. Every time I blamed my circumstances, I was handing over control of my life to my circumstances. The day you accept full responsibility for where you are is the day you can start going somewhere else. Not before. You cannot steer a ship you claim you're not steering. You cannot change a life you claim is being controlled by everyone and everything but you. Responsibility is not about blame. It's not about beating yourself up. It's about claiming your power. It's about saying, this is my life, these are my results, and if I created them, I can create something different. Let me break down how the blame trap actually works, because it's subtle and it's deadly. It starts with observation. You notice something true. The tax system favors certain people. The job market is tough. Some industries are declining, whatever it is. That observation is usually accurate. Then comes the interpretation. This is why I'm struggling. This is why I can't get ahead. This external thing is the barrier between me and success. And finally comes the conclusion. There's nothing I can do until this external thing changes. Do you see what just happened? You went from an accurate observation to a completely disempowering conclusion. And now you're stuck waiting for the world to change before you can change. Rich people observe the same things. They see the same problems, the same unfairness, the same challenges. But they ask a different question. Instead of asking, whose fault is this? They ask, what can I do about this? Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? They ask, how can I use this? One question leads to victimhood. The other leads to victory. It's that simple and that profound. You want to know the real cost of blame? It's not just that it keeps you poor, it's that it makes poverty permanent. When you blame external factors for your situation, You train yourself to wait for external factors to change before you take action. So you wait for the economy to improve, for the government to change, for the company to pay more, for someone to give you a break. And while you're waiting for all these external things to line up perfectly, life is passing by. Years turn into decades. Potential turns into regret. And you stay right where you are, convinced it's not your fault. I've noticed something about language over the years. The words people use reveal everything about their mindset. Poor people say things like, I can't afford it because, or I would do that but, or it's not fair that, or they won't let me. Listen to those phrases. Every single one of them puts the power somewhere else. Someone else controls whether you can afford it. Something else stops you from doing what you want. Other people won't let you succeed. Rich people use different language. They say, how can I afford it? Or what would I need to do to? Or who do I need to become to? You hear the difference? One language admits defeat before starting. The other language looks for solutions. Here's something that might make you uncomfortable. The government isn't coming to save you. Your employer isn't going to suddenly start paying you what you're worth out of the goodness of their heart. The economy might improve or it might not, but either way, it's not going to care about your personal financial situation. Your parents did their best with what they knew, and blaming them now doesn't give you anything except an excuse. The system has problems, real problems, but waiting for the system to be fixed before you take action means you'll wait forever. These are hard truths, but they're also liberating truths. Because if no one else is coming to save you, that means you get to save yourself. You get to be the hero of your own story. Let me tell you about blame from another angle. Every time you blame something external, you're practicing helplessness. You're literally training your brain to see yourself as powerless. You're rehearsing victimhood, and like any skill, the more you practice it, the better you get at it. Pretty soon, you don't even have to think about it. You automatically blame. You automatically explain why things aren't your fault. You automatically see barriers instead of opportunities. It becomes who you are. And the person who automatically blames is not the person who builds wealth. They can't be. Because building wealth requires agency, and blame destroys agency. You know what's interesting? The same event happens to two different people. One person says, this destroyed me. The other person says, this taught me. Same event, same challenges, same setbacks, but completely different stories about what it means. The difference isn't in what happened, the difference is in who gets to decide what it means. When you blame, you're saying the event gets to decide what it means. When you take responsibility, you're saying you get to decide what it means. That's power. That's the difference between staying poor and creating wealth. I want to challenge you on something. For the next week, I want you to listen to yourself. Not just your words out loud, but your thoughts, your explanations, your stories about why things are the way they are. How many times do you blame something external? How many times do you explain your situation with reasons that put control somewhere outside yourself? Just notice. You might be shocked. Most people are. We've gotten so good at blaming that we don't even realize we're doing it anymore. It's just background noise in our minds. And here's the thing about the blame trap. It's socially acceptable. You can sit around with friends and complain about the economy, the government, the system, the boss, and everyone will nod along. They'll agree with you. They'll add their own complaints. It feels good. It feels like connection, but it's not. It's just a group of people reinforcing each other's limitations. It's people holding each other back and calling it friendship. Which brings me to the third habit. And this one is the most painful to address because it involves people we care about, people who are close to us, people who would never intentionally hurt us but who are keeping us poor anyway. Your associations, the people you spend time with. And if you're not careful about who those people are, you can do everything else right and still stay broke forever. You cannot think like a millionaire if everyone around you thinks like they're broke. And you cannot break free from poverty if everyone in your life is comfortable with poverty and wants you to stay comfortable with it too. Let me tell you how this works and why it's the most dangerous habit of all. You've probably heard me say this before. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And every time I say it, I see people nod their heads like they understand. But understanding it and living it are 2 completely different things. Because living it means making some of the hardest decisions you'll ever make about who gets access to your time, your energy, and your future. Let me tell you about 5 friends I observed years ago. Nice people, all of them. They'd known each other since high school, stayed close through the years, saw each other every weekend. They'd sit around, drink beer, complain about their jobs, talk about what they'd do if they won the lottery, and make fun of people who were trying to get ahead. They called those people sellouts, phonies, people who thought they were better than everyone else. And you know what? All 5 of them stayed broke. Not just broke financially, but broke in spirit, broke in ambition, broke in possibilities. They formed a circle that kept each other safe from success. Because if one of them had tried to break out, tried to build something, tried to grow, the other 4 would have pulled them back down. Not out of malice, but out of fear. Fear that if one person changed, it would expose the fact that the others chose not to change. Here's what most people don't realize about associations. They're not neutral. The people around you are either lifting you up or pulling you down. They're either expanding your thinking or limiting it. They're either encouraging your growth or ridiculing your dreams. There's no middle ground. Even the people who seem neutral, who seem to just be there, are actually reinforcing wherever you currently are. And if where you currently are is broke, then neutral associations are keeping you broke. The truth is, poverty loves company. It needs company, because when you're surrounded by people who think small, your big dreams start to seem unrealistic. When you're surrounded by people who settle, your ambitions start to seem arrogant. When you're surrounded by people who complain instead of create, your efforts start to seem pointless. It's not that these people sit down and plan to hold you back. It's subtler than that. It's a comment here, a joke there, a raised eyebrow when you mention your goals. It's the way they change the subject when you talk about what you're building. It's the way they warn you about getting your hopes up. Death by 1,000 cuts, all delivered by people who claim they're looking out for you. I remember when I started getting serious about changing my life. I started reading books, going to seminars, listening to people who had what I wanted. And you know what happened? Some of the people I'd been close to started acting different around me. They'd make jokes about my books. They'd mock the seminars I attended. They'd roll their eyes when I shared something I'd learned. And I had to make a choice, a painful choice. Either I could stay comfortable with people who wanted me to stay the same, or I could become uncomfortable and find new associations that matched where I was going, not where I'd been. I chose growth. And yes, I lost some relationships, and yes, it hurt, but you know what hurt more? The thought of being 65 years old and wondering what I could have become if I'd had the courage to outgrow the wrong associations. Let me be really clear about something. This isn't about thinking you're better than anyone. This isn't about arrogance or superiority. This is about protecting your dreams like they're precious because they are. This is about understanding that if you share your dreams with people who don't have dreams, they'll minimize yours. If you share your goals with people who don't have goals, they'll tell you why yours won't work. Not because they're bad people, but because people can only see what they've trained themselves to see. And if they've trained themselves to see limitations, that's all they can offer you. Successful people guard their associations like their lives depend on it, because their lives do depend on it. They're selective about who gets their time. They're careful about who gets their ear. They're protective about who gets to speak into their future. They understand something crucial. Every conversation is either programming you for success or programming you for failure. Every interaction is either raising your standards or lowering them. Every relationship is either pulling you toward your goals or away from them. Now, here's where this gets really difficult. Sometimes the wrong associations are family members. Sometimes they're lifelong friends. Sometimes they're people you genuinely love. And I'm not telling you to cut everyone out of your life. What I'm I'm telling you is this: you have to create boundaries. You have to limit the influence of people who limit your thinking. You can love them from a distance. You can care about them without seeking their advice. You can maintain the relationship without making them your primary association. Because if the 5 people closest to you are all thinking small, living small, and dreaming small, mathematics says you will too. The solution isn't just removing negative associations. That's only half the equation. The other half is actively seeking out people who are ahead of you, people who are doing what you want to do, people who are living the life you want to live. And that's uncomfortable. It's intimidating. You feel like you don't belong. You feel like you don't have enough to offer. You feel like an imposter. Good. That discomfort is growth trying to happen. That's the feeling of your standards rising. That's the sensation of your thinking expanding. I started going to places where successful people gathered. I'd sit in the back at business meetings. I'd show up early to events just to observe. I'd read the books they read, listen to the speakers they listen to. And slowly over time, I started thinking differently. Not because someone gave me a magic formula, but because I was exposing myself to different standards, different expectations, different possibilities. You cannot maintain poor thinking when you're surrounded by wealthy thinking. The environment is stronger than willpower. Here's what happens when you change your associations. First, there's resistance. The old associations feel abandoned. They push back, they test you, they try to pull you back to who you were. This is the phase where most people give up and go back to comfort. Second, there's loneliness. You've left the old group, but you don't quite fit with the new group yet. You're between worlds. This is temporary, but it's real. Third, there's transformation. You start seeing yourself differently. You start thinking differently. You start acting differently. And finally, there's the new normal. The person you were becoming becomes who you are. The standards that felt impossible become your baseline. The dreams that seemed unrealistic become your plans. But none of that happens if you stay in the same circle, having the same conversations with the same people, getting the same results year after year after year. Your associations will either cost you everything or give you everything. There's no in between. And the question you have to answer is, are the people closest to you helping you build the life you want, or are they helping you stay comfortable with the life you've got? Because here's the reality: you can know exactly what habits are keeping you poor, but knowledge alone won't set you free. What you do with what you know makes all the difference. I can tell you about the 3 habits keeping you poor. You can nod along, you can agree, you can even see yourself in these patterns. But if you walk away and do nothing different, then this was just entertainment. And your life deserves more than entertainment. It deserves transformation. So let's talk about what happens next. Right now, today, which of these 3 habits has the strongest grip on your life? Be honest. Are you a waiter, always preparing but never starting? Are you a blamer, always explaining but never changing? Are you trapped by association, surrounded by people who keep you comfortable in your limitations? You probably see yourself in all 3 to some degree, but one of them is the dominant pattern. That's the one you start with. Here's what won't work: trying to fix everything at once. You'll overwhelm yourself, you'll fail, and you'll use that failure as evidence that change is impossible. I've seen it 1,000 times. What does work is this: pick one habit, the strongest one, and declare war on it for the next 90 days. Not forever, just 90 days. That's doable. That's concrete. That's a real commitment instead of a vague intention. If you're a waiter, your mission is simple. Start something this week. Not someday, not when you're ready, this week. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be the ultimate thing. It just has to be real action towards something that matters. Take one step you've been avoiding. Make one call you've been delaying. Start one project you've been planning. The size of the step matters less than the fact that you took it. If you're a blamer, your mission is different. For 90 days, eliminate blame from your vocabulary. Every time you catch yourself explaining why something isn't your fault, stop mid-sentence. Replace it with, what can I do about this? You'll feel ridiculous at first. You'll sound different to yourself. Good, that's your old identity dying and your new identity being born. Every time you take responsibility instead of placing blame, you're rewiring your brain for power instead of victimhood. If you're trapped by associations, you already know what you need to do, you're just scared to do it. You need to create distance from the people who drain you and proximity to people who inspire you. This week, identify one person whose thinking you admire. Reach out, buy them coffee, ask questions, learn how they think, and identify one relationship that consistently pulls you backward. You don't have to end it, but you do have to limit it. Reduce the time, change the dynamic, protect your future from people who are comfortable with your past. Here's the truth about these 90 days. The first 30 will be uncomfortable. You'll question yourself. You'll want to go back. Your old patterns will call to you like a warm bed on a cold morning. The second 30 days, you'll start seeing evidence that change is possible. Small wins, slight shifts, a different feeling about yourself. The last 30 days, you'll wonder why you waited so long. You'll realize the prison you were in was unlocked the whole time. But none of this matters if you don't do something different in the next 24 hours. Not next week, not when you finish this speech. Today, right now. One decision, one action, one small revolution against the habits that have been keeping you poor. Because the life you want, the wealth you desire, the person you're capable of becoming is waiting on the other side of your willingness to break free from these three habits. The question is, are you ready to stop waiting, stop blaming, and stop settling for associations that keep you small? Your future is calling. What are you going to do about it?